two lines below the bottom line, that's, where people are comfortable and no one's watching, there's no pressure. Between these two lines, where performance happens and people fail and people are uncomfortable, but the beauty of it is that's where people grow. And unless you're operating in between those two lines, you're not going to get growth and you're not going to succeed. If you're not walking towards that uncomfortableness around either a conversation or dealing with something, or you're kicking a can down the road, it's going to come back and hurt you later on.
Today we're talking leaving employment behind for the big bad world of business. We've got Josh Blackie from EcoDuer in the studio. Good to see you, mate.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so take us through what EcoDuer does to start with so that we've got some context to that, and then we'll go off on some different tangents, eh?
Yeah. So EcoDuer is a flooring company. We manufacture, import and sell direct to customer.
All over New Zealand?
All over New Zealand.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing that for?
We've owned the company now for probably over 3 years, and it is plenty of work sort of before that, before we stepped into the deep end of the pool, and it's been good.
So you brought the business, right?
We bought a flooring company from an elderly couple who wanted to exit flooring, and we needed some channels to market for some products that we had some ideas around, and so it suited us to jump in there.
How did you come to be looking to potentially buy a business? Because I think it's something more and more people are going to go down that path of, and I'm sure you've probably had people asking you about it since doing it.
Yeah.
With so many baby boomer business owners thinking about retiring as well.
Yeah, there's probably not a straight answer to that, to be fair. I think there's a bit of serendipity involved, and it's a bit like buying a house. Sometimes you're not looking for it, and you step into it, and next minute you're moving house. But me and my wife had always wanted probably to team up and have a business ourselves. We both had very different careers and very different skill sets, and we're probably at a stage in our lives where the kids were growing up and family was pretty settled, and there was probably some challenges we wanted to take on that if we didn't do it when we did it, we probably were never going to do it. So looking back now, I'm really thankful that we stepped into the unknown with it.
What were you both doing before buying the business?
So my wife, Nick, and by the way, she's the brains of the operation, not me. She should be sitting here.
You the beauty, the brawn, all of it?
I don't know, what warehouse manager maybe. She had a long career in real estate, and during sort of those COVID times, she was probably starting to look to the next thing. With myself, I was the general manager at the Blues rugby team, and I was happy working there, and we're heading in the right direction. So it was a big call in the end to finish up there and move on.
Yeah, and some people may recognise the voice, or maybe watching you, they may recognise you. So you played. How long did you play rugby for?
Started when I was 7.
7, yeah.
No, I was a professional rugby player for 15 years.
15,
yeah.
So the Blues and Otago, I think I recall.
Yep. So I started. I moved to Otago for university after school, and.
Any Otago stories? Just or that might take us 10 minutes.
Yeah, probably haven't got enough time on the podcast. I probably don't tell very good ones either.
So rugby at Otago, uni.
I went to uni at Otago, and it sort of ended up going quite well with rugby down there, and so I was there for 10 years, and then we moved to Japan and spent 7 years there.
Who'd you play for in Japan?
Kobe Steel.
Okay.
Yeah, which is. It's in the news a bit at the moment with they've got 3 or 4 All Blacks there, Artie Savia and Anton Leonard-Brown and a few others. So and Dave Rennie's obviously put his name in the hat for the All Blacks. So
and so then you come back to New Zealand. You play for the Blues for some time, or did you go back to Otago?
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated. So I was sort of playing back to back. I came back for a season with the Blues. They had a few gaps in their roster, so they wanted an older fella to come in and help them out. So
Yeah.
I just did a season back with the Blues a long time now, 15, 16 years ago. Yeah.
It must have been pretty scary going from the career transition of being GM and even the success in real estate for your wife, to then take the leap of buying a business. And it's almost like starting again in a new sport,
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think when when I was sort of transitioning out of playing, and I think a lot of retired athletes, not just rugby players, there is a time period where you are probably going through a bit of an exploration phase around, what's next with your life, because you've put so much energy and commitment and uh, your life into being the best that you can be in sport. And I was really fortunate. I had some really good education under my belt um, through the university, and I'd been exposed to some pretty interesting employee relationship times that were sort of fundamental to how New Zealand rugby tracked over the last 20 years. And so back in the early 2000s, I was on the board of the New Zealand Rugby Players Association, and I didn't really add much value, I don't think, but I got to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that sort of led on to I got an awesome opportunity in 2011 post the Rugby World Cup, where the relationships between World Rugby, or IRB back then, who ran the World Game, and the professional athletes, there wasn't really a relationship, um, and it became evident over time that there needed to be a more constructive relationship between players and the governing body. So um, I was asked to come and see if I could help
Yeah.
around establishing the International Rugby Players Association and putting all that together and all that. And what sort of was going to be quite a short term gig ended up being 6 years of um, international sports management.
Wow.
So we built an enterprise up from nothing and got it going. So I had a bit of confidence how to being able to put together a strategy, working out finances. I had to brush up a lot on diplomacy and
Yeah.
international relations and all that sort of thing. But I was just so fortunate that I was given the opportunity to do something like that. Uh, so young, and it certainly helped me transition out of rugby, probably more so than what I ever thought I could do.
Yeah. So those skills that you learned in that period were very beneficial by the time you then, get into running your own business. And then,
Yeah.
what happens when you buy a business like that and that first sort of couple of months of finding your feet in it all? Talk us through that, because a lot of people wouldn't understand what that's like, of then trying to figure, okay, where are we going to take this, and what is it? What's the state of it as such?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it starts before you buy it in terms of your due diligence. And um, we weren't, we didn't want to go in blind and get all these surprises uh, that were going to, be quite consequential down the line. So we're fortunate around the previous owners were really open. We had a lot of face-to-face meetings, um, and they were really transparent with their communication and speediness around what they're giving us, and they gave us the warts and all. It wasn't a dressed up thing that you discover holes 6
Yeah.
months down the track. 3 years on, I can hand on heart say what they told us is what we experienced taking the business on. So that's probably not the story for everyone who goes and buys a business. I imagine is the owners hit the road and you never hear from them again. So the due diligence phase was really important, and what I was really focused on was flooring is a really competitive industry, and there's no barriers to entry, or anyone can rock up and try and sell a floor. So what I was really interested in, and what probably piqued my interest around the company was, has it got a point of difference, or can you create a point of difference? And um, uh, the company at the time was set up as an import company, and we wanted to make sure that we could secure some protection around product and brand, and maintain a model where you can import direct to customer. And within that, in terms of our patents around the products, and some of the supply relationships, and um, the idea of manufacturer to customer, where you're stripping out a whole lot of margin along the channel, the supply chain, had a lot of merit for me to say this has got a point of difference, and if we bring in a whole lot of customer experience, which there's the good and bad in every industry, then I think we can be successful.
Are you an established business that needs a solid business plan for the next 12 months? What about accountability every single quarter to make sure that you're taking action and getting closer to your goals? Our 12-month business planning service called The Winning Formula will be perfect for you. Over a half day, we'll map out your next 12 months in business, and then we'll meet quarterly to make sure that you're taking action and getting closer to your goals. This service is great for some external perspective, some challenge, and to help you stay focused on what it is that you really need to be doing in your business, which will help you identify. You can apply for the Winning Formula by booking a call at nextadvisory.nz. Cool, and I suppose you take it over just as the economy is starting to contract.
Yep.
Thinking back as well, right? So
Yeah.
that you just about couldn't have timed it any worse. I mean, bar maybe just before COVID, but that must have been a little bit of a headwind and a bit frustrating.
Yeah. I think in hindsight, we all know what we know now, don't we? And at the time, I read a lot, and I feel like I'm pretty well informed around national and international politics and issues and finance and all that. And we sort of knew what was coming, but how it's all played out is, I don't think anyone could have expected the length of, the recession the country's been in, and some of the challenges, we've faced. Is I talked to other people in the industry, and in other industries as well, and it is hard, especially when your company's been set up for volume. In the construction industry, for example, it's been a tough ride.
I bet. How have you navigated that, both financially, let's say, and business-wise, but then also mentally? Because it would be, I'd imagine, so easy to go down the route of, oh, this is bad timing and poor us, and how could this happen, and shit, we've taken on too much risk, or whatever, that side. But then also, okay, like, how do you react and make sure that you don't let it fail?
Yeah. There's probably a whole bunch of answers you can give for that question. I think mindset is really important, and the conversations that we're having between us, me and my wife, we're always like, this is harder than what we thought, but this is as hard as it gets. You little you beauty. This is, there's only upside from here, and so I think that first year when you're sort of finding your feet and you're changing a whole lot of stuff, and we did big rebrands, and invested a lot of capital into a whole lot of transformational sort of stuff for the business. And there's not an immediate outcome from that. Your mindset is what gets you through, and I guess confidence in your skills, and seeing a little bit over the horizon around what can happen. And my wife, she'd always use the saying, keep pedaling the bike, just keep pedaling the bike. And it's such a good phrase to use, because if you're pedaling the bike, you're always moving forward, and it'll pay back at some stage. So
nice, I love that. It's good, because it is so easy to. I was talking in a podcast recently about, when you pedal up the hill and then you're going down, you can almost dial it back, but before you stop to start pedaling again, you're almost like, okay, I'm not going to let this momentum go.
yeah.
I do find that you've probably been able to take a lot of lessons from sport into business, and especially the mindset stuff a lot of Kiwi people might not get exposed to, because we've got a few clients that have sporting backgrounds and to
Yeah,
a relatively good standard, and they all seem to make really good business owners and almost look at
yeah.
business at a bit of a different lens and almost accept the challenge a bit more.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it, but I do think like sport is a really selfish.
Endeavour.
I should say, elite sport
Yeah.
is often a really selfish endeavor, and it is difficult for families and social networks and all that sort of thing, just because your whole life revolves around your performance on the weekend or at a major event or whatever. And uh, I think you're naturally driven. You've got to have a fire in your belly to do that day in, day out, to if you want to be the best in the world at whatever you're doing. And and so there's probably a natural alignment with running a business. Like, you've got to have fire in your belly
Yeah.
to navigate through everything. You've got to be competitive and want to win, to succeed. And it's, there's a lot of synergies there. And I'm so glad that I could have easily not done it.
Mm.
I'm so glad that we did, because I'm probably starting to realize a few of these things now. And yeah,
Nice. Well, Phil mentioned to me that some of the things that he's observed from the outside is like, you guys have hustled hard, you've focused on pipeline, you've focused on relationships, you've remained agile in an environment, like you said before, that can be highly competitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So to like those points, do they sound like the summary of almost how you've kept the bike moving?
yeah. I think so. There's no there's no substitute for hard work, I don't think. It, I think, there's probably a generational change, and definitely different industries and all that sort of thing around, lifestyles and fitting around your work and all that sort of thing. But I look at successful people and what they've done, and there's a big cross section, but you can't substitute hard work and consistency and just stacking the days and going hard. So that's sort of how we approach it, and that sort of, I don't know, we makes us get out of bed in the morning and get on with it.
What
Yeah.
what surprised you about business, do you think?
I think I was sort of in a world where um, people are trying to be the best at what they do,
Yeah.
in sport, and with that comes personalities that, I know some that might call them A-type personalities, where they are, so focused on what they want to achieve, and they're not comfortable environments. They're edgy environments, and there's tension. Hopefully, most of the time it's healthy tension, but the hard environments, coming into a different industry, and you're working with subcontractors and tradies, and a whole spectrum of people that I wasn't exposed to before. And one of my big learnings is, how do I work um, with different types of people that I haven't sort of had much to do with before, and inspire them to want to work hard
Mm.
and get an outcome for their families and all that as well. So, because some people are happy turning up and doing a job and going home and having a nice life. Uh, I haven't come from that world, so yeah, it's a bit different.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I guess if you spent so much time in that rugby environment or any sporting environment, you probably almost have the perception that that's just what the world is like, and then you
Yeah,
step it, because you can't half-ass it in a professional sport environment, right?
no,
Otherwise, it's basically, oh, sorry, mate, doesn't cut it here,
yeah,
you're gone.
it's brutal. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's brutal. There's a public pressure, and there's a individual pressure, and then you've got a coach or
mm,
organization pressure as well. That, yeah, it's you can't compare it to a whole lot of other stuff. People aren't worried what I do on the weekend running a business, but they do if you're working for a sports franchise or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel like it's made you more adaptable, or you've got resilience to pressure? you think? More comfortable with?
It's hard to say that. I think it's, from 19 years old, you've
Mm.
sort of been in these environments where um, you're probably at the edge of your capacity in terms of pressure and all that. But you reflect on all that and you think, well, wasn't that bad. Like,
Yeah.
no one remembers it now, do they?
I
Why
wish.
are we under so much pressure?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what you value and all that sort of thing. And I've valued being a sportsman and put a lot of pressure on myself, and there are times where you're shitting yourself.
Yeah.
But that's um, yeah. There's a guy called Kerry Evans. I think he's done a bit of work with the All Blacks over the last few years as well. And I always remember listening to him once. He was talking about this uh, high performance environments, and I can't explain it as well as he did, but basically he drew 2 lines on a whiteboard, and below the bottom line he said that's where people are comfortable, and no one's watching, there's no pressure and all that. And he said that's easy. And then he drew another line. He said between these 2 lines is where performance happens and people fail and people are uncomfortable. But the beauty of it is that's where people grow. And unless you're operating in between those 2 lines, you're not going to get growth and you're not going to succeed. So, so my mindset is a lot around that. When I am uncomfortable with business, internally, and I think we all have our different coping mechanisms and
Yeah.
and all that around business and life and all that sort of thing. But I think when you can reframe it in your head around the growth, and failure is not bad. Failure is a good thing as long as you get back on the horse and you learn from it. If you're not learning from it, then you're not growing. So easy to say, but it's
Yeah.
not nice when it's all happening though.
But it's a good way to picture it though, right? Where it's almost we're getting something from that, if we want to call it failure, because we are actually above that line and in between those 2 lines. So therefore we are growing, and
Yeah,
it's easy to sit below that line and not even be attempting to fail and go, well, I'm not losing, but yeah, because you're not really even
yeah.
trying or pushing because you're
Well,
not
it's
playing, you're not in the game.
comfortable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very comfortable. And the more people, I think we have in the country performing in that zone of growth, then the better off we are for a country. But if we've got a country of people who are just happy to be lifestylers and
Drift.
yeah, then we'll get what we deserve. So yeah.
That'd be why you're in the arena rather than the grandstands, I'd imagine. Do you have any examples of that where it sometimes might be hard for you to do something in business, or there's something you need to do, whether it's approaching a supplier or a customer, but you can see that, okay, I actually just need to get above that line and sit in between those 2 lines? Is that
Yeah.
how you sort of then picture that?
Yeah, I think on a daily basis, and I don't think it matters what business you're doing.
Mm.
You're having to problem solve, and you're having to problem solve because something's often not on track, or there's been a mistake made, or you need to reset something or whatever. And if you're not walking towards that uncomfortableness around either a conversation or um, dealing with something, or you're kicking a can down the road,
Mm.
it's going to come back and hurt you later on. And like a really good example in our industry is, flooring is a natural product, so it behaves like a natural product. It can move and do some funny things. So um, in terms of communication with the customers, there's communication before sale, and there's communication during sale and after sale, and we have to be so clear with those conversations. And on the odd occasion where something doesn't go to plan, what I stress with others and our people is that you've got to get on the front foot with the communication, because if you try and sweep it under the carpet or hope that it's going to go away, it's going to come back and bite you twice as bad. So, that's I still have challenges around that now, and I know my purple patch is early in the morning to get on the phone and deal with things I don't find comfortable, but you have to do it if you're running a business. I think it's just par for the course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unavoidable. That's sort of the beautiful but also scary thing about business, right? Is that
Yeah,
you know that, and therefore you can't avoid those problems.
yeah.
Yeah,
And people appreciate it as well. Like, there's a spectrum of people who are unreasonable uh, and constructive. So you're dealing with the spectrum the whole time. But if you're proactive around your comms, and you're genuine and authentic, and you're willing to admit mistakes where it's your mistake or whatever, then
yeah,
it generally is fine.
yeah,
Yeah, it's when you try and hide from things, it's not.
yeah. People can spot it, right?
Yeah,
So going back to buying the business, what advice would you have for somebody who's looking to buy a business? If you now of what you do know through going through this
yeah,
process and buying one, but then running the business, what would you suggest for someone who's thinking about buying a business?
yeah. Probably the first step, I think, is understanding what your motivators are to do it, and what um, how you how your personality is in
Yeah,
terms of, is it conducive to your industry and running a business and all that, and what is, what's your goal 10, 20 years down the line. And for us, um, as I said before, I was looking for something where we could create a really strong point of difference, and we could protect that point of difference. But that's not going to be everyone's motivator, and so really understanding yourself first is probably the first step. And then, I'm biased. I don't want to be running a business selling other people's products or selling other people's things, or whatever. I want to create stuff for myself, and get full reward for what you're doing. So there's a whole bunch of different businesses out there, but if it's just if the motivator's just to get out of your current job, or um, replace your salary or something like that, then I think you need to really do a lot more deeper analysis on yourself, and then you'll realize the gains down the track because you've understood yourself, and what motivates you.
yeah, nice. So actually thinking about what it is that you can maybe bring to a business, or why having a business is important to you, rather
Yeah,
than just, okay, this is my ticket away from employment, for
yeah,
instance. Because I think from what we see, people do kind of grab onto the first thing that they see that's for sale and think, okay, maybe that's it.
yeah,
But like you say, there needs to be that deeper reflection.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I'd also add, your appetite for risk as well is, geez, if you're a really conservative person, then you want to have a conservative business.
Yeah.
If your risk appetite is a little bit higher, and you've got some good foundations, and you haven't got a whole lot of other life distractions, then the world's your oyster in terms of what you can do.
And I think something you said before too, like having that 10-year and 20-year vision, or even just being able to think like that, is
Mm,
incredibly important, because it's not really how we get taught. And it's almost the reverse of what's happening in
mm,
society now, is basically, do a year at a job and then jump to the next, or 2 years.
yeah,
But if what we sometimes notice too of business owners, as they get deeper into it, it becomes much the same as the year before, because you don't have to break the back of all these different challenges, and it almost gets a bit boring. It's like they want to just add some more chaos in
yeah,
to
yeah,
then
yeah,
solve it, because it used to have heaps of chaos.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's I often think, sort of pre um, COVID, or even during COVID, the economy was going pretty well,
Mm.
and people probably were a bit lazy with how they were running their businesses, because people just kept coming in the door and people were spending money. The last 3 years has been a little bit different, and those ones that probably got lazy during that time and haven't changed, are probably suffering a little bit from it. Whereas if your mindset is to constantly be ahead of the curve and on top of things, then yeah,
Yeah.
you're ahead of the others.
I think some of those people you're mentioning, they're the ones that leave the comments on the liquidation videos that I was telling you about before.
Yeah.
And have there been any moments where you've sat around the dinner table with Nick and kind of gone, shit, have we made the right decision here? Tell us we're all normal.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it's more walking the dog for us.
Okay.
Geez, the
Yeah.
dog's getting some good walks
Yeah.
the last 3 years, and that's generally our board table when we're walking around the block, so the dog knows more about the business
Yeah.
than anyone else does. But um, not directly. We haven't said like we went in with our eyes wide open, and we knew the potential. We probably underestimated a little bit how much effort and work it was going to take from us. But I've learnt to appreciate that, because if you don't do that, then you're not going to really be proud of what you achieve
Yeah.
at the end of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in between the two lines when you're doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you sort of self-coach yourself when it does get hard? I know we sort of touched on it before, but like when you can see that it's hard, you must have a little bit of that muscle from those sporting days of Broncos or bloody
Yeah,
shuttles or whatever, where it's basically like we know this is going to be hard, but we've still got to do it.
yeah. That's a really good question, Luke.
It's
um,
probably second nature to you.
yeah, and I find it hard to separate. Uh, yeah, what you, what you're talking about
Well,
there.
because sometimes, like, even like, if something's hard, I know it's going to be hard, but I've gotten better at almost like gamifying it or telling myself, okay, it's going to be
Yeah,
hard, but just do it instead of going, oh, that's going to be hard, therefore I'll just procrastinate or ignore it. And I
yeah,
think a lot of business owners struggle with that, and we've got to find our own way of going, like, it still needs to be done. Yes, it will
yeah,
be hard, but let's go.
yeah, yeah. And I think internal motivation versus extrinsic motivation is such a blessing. Like if you if you're internally motivated and you can put pressure on yourself because either other people are relying on you, or you want to be proud of what you do, um, or you just want to have meaning in your life, then it's sort of easy to either trick yourself or motivate yourself to get out and do it. And if I think about my progression through sport, by the end of it, I had to start tricking myself to motivate myself to play, because you're sort of at the end of it, and you're looking, to the next step in your life, but you still got a job to do. So your motivation becomes, harder and harder. Um, with business, I haven't found myself having to trick myself. It's all pretty real at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's your internal voice is
Yeah.
gets you out of bed in the morning.
And what's next for you guys, mate? What can you see in the next few years? Anything you can let us into that you guys might be working on or focused on, or any insight there?
Yeah, in terms of the business, so like we're always trying to stay ahead of the innovation curve. We've been pretty successful with some of the things that we've gone deep in terms of products,
Yeah.
and technology, and that's really put us in a good position to keep investing and to stay ahead of the curve. I think small companies are the ones that do innovation in a lot of industries, because they're agile and they can flex pretty easy, and they've got layers of complexity to make decisions and things like that. So we can make really good fast decisions and fail fast if we need to as well. Excuse the
Yeah.
word, but
Yeah.
um, we're I think it's next month. Oh no, sorry, next week we're getting some new technology that we're going to test over the next 4 months, and there's a bit of confidence in it, but I don't know. So we're testing, and if it tests well, we'll invest pretty heavily into it. And I think what will play out from there is, and this is what sort of happened with another couple of products, is we go through a testing cycle, we put it on the market, we position it in the market, and all going well, it goes really well, and then the big players start getting interested in the product, because a small company's doing so well out of it. So that's sort of the life cycle of what our company's been doing. We try and hold things as long as we can, but yeah.
It sounds like one of those environments where you're almost not allowed to stay complacent, because eventually the market or the environment or the industry will probably out innovate you. So you've sort of constantly got to be on your toes and looking to the next improvement or innovation.
Yeah, definitely. And I've done a lot of research on overseas trends and what's happening overseas. You look at places like Belgium is a place. It's like they're the All Blacks of flooring, and
Yeah.
they have a lot of experts and a lot of innovation comes out of there. America is just a massive flooring market, and so they lead the world in terms of volume and all that sort of thing. And I look at a lot of the things going on internationally, and then I look at New Zealand, and a lot of our products that have been positioned in New Zealand are really low end quality products, but they have had really good salesmen
Nice.
around them in New Zealand. So there's opportunities there to shift that, because it's very different to the overseas market, where there's the products are really good, and the volumes that they're selling in some products are nowhere even comparable to what's sold in New Zealand. So,
Wow.
and I imagine it's the same with a lot of building products in New Zealand. We're a small village, and if a good salesman starts selling some stuff, then everyone in the village
Yeah,
wants to buy it.
yeah.
So,
So-
it's our challenge to shift some of that thinking.
So we might be missing out on some premium products that are actually out there that could
Oh,
great for
absolutely.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's an ideal client for you guys? Like, who's typically getting in touch, and what are they asking for? Just so context for the listeners, so they can sort of picture or understand.
Yeah. So it's not our tagline, but we aim to help solve building challenges for architects, builders, and even your residential development. So there was some real big challenges around acoustics and flooring, in terms of having a contribution to building ratings and all that sort of thing when you have multi-level dwellings. That have become such a big thing in Auckland with the unitary plan and from 2017 onwards. And so we did a lot of product development and solved a problem around a lot of waste and glues and corks and all that would be being used to build mass to achieve acoustic ratings. So we've overcome that. Another thing in the last couple of years has been a hardened oak product that is a completely new category for New Zealand. It's gone really well in Europe, and we bought it here. And the oak that we've used in New Zealand floors, primarily French oak and even New Zealand native timber, can be very soft at times. Whereas there's some really good technology around hardening your floor, so you can walk on it in high heels, or dog can scratch it, and it's not gonna create too many issues. So to go back to our target client, it's really people who want to solve problems in flooring to meet their lifestyle and the Kiwi way of life. Then we give our best advice, and sometimes that's what people need, and sometimes it's not. So
Nice.
Yeah.
And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to do that and to have a look at what you guys are up to?
Yep. So we've got our website, ecoduralflooring.co.nz. All our contact details are there. We've got our showroom and warehouse over in Albany. And people are probably getting to the sharp end of making decisions and all that, and want to see floors laid in bigger formats. When there's a real focus on the decor, the floor, and all that sort of thing. Our showroom's well set up for clients to come in there and problem solve and make decisions and all that sort of thing.
And talk a bit of rugby?
Yeah. Talk about. I often get you look familiar.
Yeah.
I said, I've never met you before.
Yeah.
And they don't put two and two together, so it's good.
Probably how you like it, is it?
Yeah,
You're pretty humble. Yeah. Any
nice.
YouTube highlights of you on YouTube, surely?
Well, it wasn't a thing when I was playing. That's how long ago I was playing. But I'm sure there's stuff out there.
Hopefully someone watching can get an editor to go through all the footage and put some together.
Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you so much for your time. Are you're servicing clients all around the country, for instance? If you've got developers and architects listening to this, for instance, they can get in touch?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. We do a lot of multi-level sort of residential builds at the moment. And they're coming online pretty strong at the moment as well. So where there's acoustic requirements needed in flooring, then for architects and developers or even interior designers are trying to solve problems around that and meet ratings, then we've got affordable, good looking products to have a look at.
Nice. Well, we'll chuck the website into the show notes as well as your email. But yeah, thanks again, mate, and we look forward to seeing the progress over the next few years.
No, really appreciate being invited to have a young Luke.
Good
Thank you
man.
very much.